I would like to speak with you this morning concerning our plans to reopen the church following our shutdown with the COVID-19 situation. About 12 weeks ago, the deacons and I first brought up the issue of the virus at a deacons meeting, and we discussed it very briefly because at the time there was little information and I don't think anybody in the country was expecting what would come next. And then of course things unfolded very quickly, and it was over 8 weeks ago that we took the decision to postpone services. I believed it would only be for a short period of time, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, but then of course everything began to change, and now for 8 weeks we have not held services here in the church. We've tried to live stream and record, and we've tried various ways of trying to make the service accessible to people, but nothing can replace gathering together with other Christians. Today I want to speak to you about our plans for reopening, and what I want to do is share with you just the highlights to begin with, as I did Sunday morning, and then to work through some of the detail and just let you know what to expect when you return here for the first service together. Now, a couple of things I'd like to say at the outset is you need to do whatever the Lord has led you to do. And so there's no pressure for you to come back before you're ready. I'm looking forward to seeing each one of you. I'm looking forward to seeing visitors come to our church once more. I'm looking forward to seeing individuals and families in the auditorium here and filling the pews. It's just not the same not having each one of you here. But I want you to only come back when you're ready to do so. And so before I say anything else, I want to make that clear. I understand there are those who are hesitant to come back, and there may be those who don't return for a little while yet concerning the virus situation. And I understand there's no pressure, there's an encouragement, there's a warm welcome, but you need to do whatever the Lord leads you to do. So I want to now share with you just the guidelines in highlight form that we went through Sunday morning, and then I'll work through some of the principles that we can apply from a biblical perspective, and then let you know what it is to expect when we regather here together. So the highlights, the shutdown and reopening principles that we're applying. So why did we shut down in the first place? Well, number one, it was out of concern for one another. As the initial numbers and statistics and models were being shared 8, 9, 10 weeks ago, the possibility of many people getting sick and dying was put to us. And so out of concern for one another, for those who are vulnerable, we decided to postpone the service. And so that was our number one motivation, was to do what was best for the health and well-being of the individuals who come to the church. We also wanted to demonstrate submission to the government. And in the coming months, we will go to Romans chapter 13 and other portions of Scripture to see how we as Christians ought to respond to the government. And it's not a simple issue, but we want to take time to work through those things to help us understand why we did what we have done in this past experience, and to guide us for any future events. And so we wanted to demonstrate submission to the government. As far as I'm aware, in none of our lifetimes has this situation occurred where the government has requested. In some states, I understand it's been enforced, but the position of the government requesting churches to close, it's not happened in our lifetime. And so it was an opportunity, I felt, to demonstrate submission to the government. It's not a blind obedience. It's not anything we did out of fear, but something that we felt was following the principles of God's word. Nothing that we did was fear-driven. As I spoke with the deacons, as I spoke with others in the church, and we didn't feel a sense of fear, but there was a motivation to protect, to mitigate any risk. And as I shared at the outset of this entire postponement, the principle of closing down out of concern for others is something we've done before when we have snow days, or if there are other weather events. Then we understand that sometimes we postpone our gathering. This has gone on longer, and it's been much more complicated than a simple snow day, but there's a principle there that we already apply. And so we shut down upon those bases. Now, why do we need these guidelines to reopen? Well, for similar reasons. We want to continue to show concern for one another. There are those who are vulnerable to illnesses. For the vast majority, if you catch this COVID-19, the likelihood of becoming seriously ill seems to be very low, but for others it can be extremely serious. And there are those who have genuine concerns about catching it themselves or transmitting it to others. And so out of concern for one another and out of empathy for each other's concerns, we want to show this submission to each other by following certain guidelines. And also, again, continuing to respect our government and for the guidelines that they are requesting us to make, and not only churches but businesses as well. So what you need to know will be put on highlight form in these graphics. I'll be showing them on social media and they'll be emailed out to those on our list. But there is a more detailed document that should be arriving in people's letterboxes soon, or mailboxes, and going out in email and on our website. So these are just the highlights. Our reopening timeline then is that on May the 17th we anticipate in-person services. We're going to move to 2 morning services. There's no Sunday school as we would usually have. We're not going to break up into groups with different age groups and classes. There's going to be 2 identical services, one at 9:30 and the other at 10:45. Each service will last approximately 45 minutes, and the idea is that because we're all gathered together, because we are going to request people to wear masks, we want to keep the time frame minimal. I'll say more about the masks in just a moment. To keep numbers at around about the 50 mark, to allow us to practice social distancing and to keep a certain percentage of the building unoccupied, we're asking that if your last name begins with A through H, then you attend the first service. If your last name begins with I through Z or Z, then if you could attend the second service. Now, I understand that some have work commitments, they have family commitments and responsibilities, and you can't follow that particular guideline. Please come to whatever service you can. We just want to try and keep numbers to a bit of a minimum, as I said, to maintain social distancing, but still trying to regather to the best we can with the guidelines that government and local authorities have set and that we ourselves feel are applicable to us. And so come to whatever service is guided by your last name if you do plan on attending. There's not going to be any Sunday school or nursery, although the nursery will be open and the resources there are available. We're not going to have nursery staff, but there will be a volunteer on hand to direct you to the resources in there so that you can make use of whatever you need for your child. We will return to our normal Sunday morning and Sunday evening and midweek schedule in our second stage, and that is yet to be determined. We will announce that in a week or two. We're taking things a week at a time at the moment. Right now we anticipate that our stage 1 of opening is going to be May the 17th, 24th and 31st, and for those weeks it'll just be 2 Sunday morning services, but we will make announcements concerning other events along the way. Our second stage is when we return to Sunday morning, Sunday evening as usual, and our midweek meeting also. And then our third stage is when we start adding in the extra activities such as choir and our vacation Bible school and things that aren't regularly scheduled. So that's our basic reopening timeline. But as I said, the deacons and I are looking at things weekly, and we will let you know how things proceed. So reopening guidelines then, just again, the highlights. We are asking that people wear a mask. Now I understand there's been so much information put out that it's hard to know what to follow. I respect the different positions that people are taking. At first we were advised to not wear a mask, and then they said we needed to wear a mask, and at the moment in all local businesses and the guidelines are there that we must wear a mask. And so for this week we're asking that you wear a mask. We do have some here at the church that you can use if you don't have one available. And again, if you have a health issue or if you have young children, then they don't need to wear a mask. For our children, I understand it's certainly not recommended, but we are simply requesting it. I'm going to share in a moment some biblical principles regarding our submission to one another. And again, if you're uncomfortable with that and you choose not to regather just yet, that's fine. I understand. I'm looking forward to seeing each one of you, but I want you to do what the Lord leads you to do. And if you're still not ready to regather, then I completely understand. Social distancing is the second aspect of these guidelines. We're going to close off alternating pews, and so we want to try and maintain that 6-foot distance. And so please Look for the different layout as you come into the auditorium on Sunday. We will, at the end of a service, dismiss row by row. And so we're going to dismiss from the back row and then forward from there, and we'll file out. And on Sunday morning, certainly, we'll do so in a way which allows the first service to leave before the second service attendees arrive. And then the final thing is no physical contact. So we want to minimize the physical contact at this time, so we won't be shaking hands. And again, this is something that just when the regular flu season is at its peak, we don't do, so that's nothing unusual. We're not going to be handing the offering plate round. Instead, the plates will be at the back, or if you've been simply sending a check to the church treasurer or using our online giving options, then you can continue to do that. But again, it's just minimizing any physical contact. So those are the highlights for our reopening timeline and guidelines. And now I just want to share with you some of the biblical principles behind our reopening and the way that we are transitioning back to our regular services. Now, the guidelines that we have are drawn from biblical principles, from discussions among the leadership here in the church, but I've also been on conference calls with 20 or so local churches who, by the way, are all reopening on the 17th, just to show a force of unity there. Together we have sent an announcement to local law enforcement and to the local media just to say that as a body of Christians we are acting in unison in this. The principles have also been drawn from guidelines from our insurance company, the Center for Disease Control, the Christian Law Association, as well as those frequent announcements being put out by the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Now, I don't say all that in order to put across that I'm some kind of an authority on these things. I'm not. I have so much that I'm trying to understand and so many different things that I'm trying to apply. I share all that simply to say that we've done our best to do our research in order to do the right thing. And again, I respect those who take a different position and have different opinions on this. As I said a moment ago, if anyone doesn't have peace about regathering just yet, then I understand. And there's a warm welcome that awaits you when you arrive, a warm, contactless welcome for the time being. But I'm looking forward to seeing each one of you, but I want it to be at the time that you are ready. And so I don't want you to feel any pressure to go against whatever it is the Lord has led you to do. In Ephesians 5:21, it tells us to submit ourselves one to another in the fear of God. So if you want to regather, but you're uncomfortable with some of the guidelines, but you want to be here, then this is something that I would ask you to bear in mind. Now, for genuine submission to exist, it necessitates that there is some disagreement. That disagreement, I'm not looking for to be resolved by people just setting their own opinions aside, but I'm looking for us to unite under with a greater truth. For the Christian, that greater truth is our faith in Jesus Christ. There is a deep divide that exists in society at the moment due to COVID-19. We've all seen a variety of news reports and statistics and editorials, predictive models, and there are and there will continue to be for a long, long time debates and discussions as to whether this crisis is real or perceived, manipulated, manufactured, mismanaged, taken advantage of. Whatever the case may be, those disagreements are there and they will continue to be. Now, I understand that not everyone will agree with these guidelines. And as I've said a moment ago, I do respect that. But when we gather together, let's gather together with the greater truth that unites us, that of Jesus Christ, than of secondary things that would divide us. We first and foremost gather to worship. So when we do come back, let's not allow the divisions in society to manifest themselves in our congregation. In the months to come, I will discuss some of these principles drawn from Romans 13 and other passages of Scripture in more detail, probably in our midweek meetings. But when we first regather, let's do it with a heart of unity in order to worship the Lord. When we do regather, it's going to be a little bit different for a time. As I've already shared, we are going to have 2 morning services. We won't have any youth activities. We are going to prepare as best we can to reopen by deep cleaning the church, and our regularly scheduled cleaning crews will be supported to do a little bit more in between weekly services. We will be wiping down surfaces in between the 2 Sunday morning services. So we're going to be doing different things in preparation, but also our order of service is going to be a little bit different. Because we are requesting people to wear masks, and because the children are going to be in the service, we are going to keep the service time to a minimum. We're only going to be singing 2 hymns. I will be doing a short children's talk, a little message just for the kids. And then the sermon itself is going to be much shorter than usual. When we dismiss from our service, we're going to dismiss from the back row, line by line, as we leave. The ushers are not going to be bringing offering plates round, but I've already described the setup we will have with that. And so things will be a little bit different for a time, but we want to do what we can to show concern for those who have a concern about their health and the health of others, but we also want to regather the best we can. As I've said numerous times already, if you're not ready to regather yet for whatever reason, I respect that and I understand. I do look forward to seeing you all again when you feel comfortable to do so. And we're going to be looking at things week by week. This is where we stand for now as we approach to May the 17th. If you haven't received a letter with all this detailed information, let me know and I will get it to you. It is available on our website and I will be sending it out by email. If you have any questions, let me know, speak with myself or one of the deacons, and we'll do all that we can in preparation to regather here as a body of believers. May God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you as soon as possible.